To my right, let me introduce the company. It's called Sympatex, and it works on closing the loop for performance, multi-layer fabrics, and the director apparel at Sympatex Technologies, Sabine Feuerer. And from sustainable angle, she's an angel. I'm sorry, we got that wrong. So that's why we put angel up here. She's an NGO with initiatives which initiates and supports projects which contributes to minimizing the environmental impact of industry and society. The curator and consultant at the sustainable angle is Amanda Johnston. Great work. And then we have the small brand, Bleed, making fashion that is 100% vegan and mostly organic, basically using the whole range of currently well-established, more sustainable fiber options. We will talk about that maybe later on, and I think he's got something to show us. Here we have the owner of Bleed Clothing, Michael Spitzbarth. Swedish Stockings just launched an industry first. They've launched 2 new products. One that is using 100% recycled elastan, and one is 100% recycled polyamide. On the panel, sustainability and brand manager at Swedish Stockings, Andreea Toca. Yeah, woo! And Circular Systems recycles all kinds of fibers while also creating new qualities out of old natural fibers. EU Marketing and R&D at Circular System, Linus Mueller. And he said he would love to wear more, go more wild, but his boss doesn't like. You would like to wear this suit? Okay, I'm going to talk to your boss then. Amanda, let's dive into the conversation. Take a look at the importance of avoiding waste. You see, I've been talking all day since 10 o'clock this morning, so I have something in my mouth like a nod. Okay, so the importance of avoiding waste, favoring recyclability and composability. What are the most sustainable fiber options, Amanda?
Yes, very, very tricky question. Often we will have visitors who come to the Future Fabrics Expo ask us, so which is the most sustainable fabric here? And of course, that's all context-based. And it's about what you're producing, where you're producing it, et cetera, et cetera. There's a whole host of questions that we have to go into. But I suppose really what we're trying to promote through the diversity of the textiles that we showcase is that there isn't one fix. We want to see a world where we balance our material resources and we don't just rely upon the 2 very toxic fibers that we're currently reliant upon. So the global fiber demand, for example, for poly-based, oil-based fabrics is over 2/3 global fiber demand, and then 1/4 of that is conventionally produced cotton, which is devastating to the environment. So we're seeking to try and encourage people to think really carefully about the fiber choices that they're making, and also in response to your question about waste, thinking very intelligently about how you use those materials, because within those materials is money locked into them. So waste is gold. If you're wasting materials, you're burning money, essentially. So there's a sort of bigger picture thinking, and then there's a drilling down into what does each particular fiber offer you. Does that?
Yeah, well, which one has the most potential to spread and to become more important? And
Well, it does depend on the lens through which you look at a particular fiber. So, for example, if you look at life cycle analysis on polyester, it can be recycled several times. It's much hardier, it's more durable, so it doesn't take as much water, it doesn't take as much energy, but then it's very poor on, if you want to dye it conventionally, then it's bad. So it's about really what we do is quite a lot of weighing up about the specifics of fibers, the choice, and is it fit for purpose?
So maybe we can ask Sabine, what does it take to create a better fiber or materials that ideally never end up as waste?
So first of all, you have to focus on your monomaterial. It should be monomaterialistic and it should be pretty clean. So the cleaner the material is, the better the fiber gets.
Oh, no mixed material
No
then?
mixed material, because then the quality is getting worse. So then you can achieve a better product at the end. And you have to think about the recycling process from the beginning, so that you can make the recycling most sustainable for the whole product, fiber, or whatever you want to do with it.
Okay, maybe you can hand that question over to everybody. If somebody wants to add something. Yeah. Oh, yeah, we're too many people, so thank you for putting 3 microphones.
Yeah, so just sort of going back to the first question that you asked, what exactly is the most sustainable fibre out there? That's one of the innovations that we've spent a lot of time researching, and the one in particular that we're really proud of is AgriLoop biofibre, and the focus with that innovation is actually transforming agricultural waste. So, you know, you produce banana, you harvest the banana, but you're left with a massive crop, biomass. Same goes for things like pineapple or flaxseed or CBD oil. There's just so much crop waste out there. And the reality is that all of that is technically fibre. You just have to be smart about how you process it, how you go about liberating that fibre from the plant. And so that's what we do with AgriLoop. In terms of what we consider is the most, or why we consider it is the most sustainable, is it's not just sustainable, it's actually regenerative. The benefits that are harvested by using AgriLoop biofibre extend beyond simply having a regenerative biofibre. You have the communities that are benefiting from it. You know, farmers in a lot of third world countries, farmers in general, have a really hard time, and so if you can provide a new crop from which they can make money, that's fantastic. So yeah, that's our sort of opinion on it. We're working quite closely with you guys, so it's really exciting. Looking forward to seeing you in London next week. So yeah, that's our opinion on it. But you make a very valid point, and
you can add something if you get the microphone. Oh,
yeah, I think it'll be good. We'll have to sort of rotate.
It is. I mean, I would say from my personal perspective, I graduate to natural fibres, biosourced fibres, but it is also about balance. We've also got a really...
Take it a little closer, please. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Is it? Okay, so and we've got a crushing waste problem. You guys probably all know that. Plastic-based waste problem. So there's this sort of philosophy around thinking about, okay, you shouldn't be using anything oil-based, plastic-based. Clearly it feels nicer to be more connected to nature and be, you know, AgriLoop's amazing. But then what do we do with all this plastic that's already mountains and mountains and mountains of it on this planet? That's a problem that's got to be solved, as well as heading towards avoiding it. That we need to be doing in the long term. But we've got to solve this massive mountain of waste. So anything that involves kind of keeping that out of landfill or burning it is clearly no-go, is also something that we've got to think, because, you know, we are still very reliant on these oil-based materials. It's not what I would want, but they're there. So it's, what do we do with them?
Yeah, absolutely. It's another area we've been innovating in quite heavily. So we have a few different product platforms. AgriLoop, the biofibre that I was talking about, but another really interesting one is the TextLoop platform, which focuses on mechanical recycling. So again, you know, a big issue, while monomaterials are fantastic and we should really be pushing that envelope, the reality is you talk with 95% of the brands, you talk with, most importantly, the customer, and they want something that feels and performs well. And that's where the monomaterial argument starts to fall apart a little bit. So what we've sort of really focused on is using the existing waste that is out there, which, like we know, is a lot of mixtures, and mechanically recycling that. The issue that then comes from using that is that once you mechanically recycle, you have very, very short staple fibre. When you spin with short staple fibre, the lack of surface area means that there's just very bad performance, which is the innovation that we've developed, is focusing on spinning with that really, really short staple fibre. So we've got really exciting fabrics, really exciting yarns, which perform just as well, if not better in some cases, simply because we really had to take time to think about how it actually works, how the composition of that yarn and how the engineering of that yarn works. We could really spend time in perfecting it and moving a step beyond traditional performance. So yeah, it's a difficult one, and there's some really exciting projects happening out there with really important brands. So things are moving much faster than we'd initially thought. But yeah, it is possible slowly.
So maybe, Andreea, you can talk about your launch and the 100% recycled fibers. I mean, that's amazing. How did you do that?
Yeah, so just to clarify a little bit, we're launching 2 products, and they're both made out of 100% recycled nylon and 100% recycled elastic. So there's both nylon and elastic in each product, and this is the first time we've been able to recycle the elastic. And that's because, as many of you know, elastic is found in blended fibers most commonly, and it's very hard to recycle blended fibers. So what we have done is we've taken Roika's innovation. We've used their elastic in our tights, and what they do is they use pre-consumer waste, elastic waste, and they recycle it. So we're really excited to launch these products. No other hosiery brand, as far as we know, has included recycled nylon and recycled elastic.
So, and research and development is costly, so maybe I can talk to you, Michael, how cost and resource eating is the research and development into new materials before they are market ready?
Yeah, that's a difficult question, as we are not inventing the materials. But of course, we have a big development, especially when I show you one project. That's more easier for me. So we have this shoe. I started the project 4 years ago in Portugal, and it's a completely recycled shoe, which is also climate neutral. We compensated with Climate Partner, and yeah, it was really, really hard at the beginning because you have so many materials inside of the shoe and for the insoles and the sole material and everything to make it long-lasting. And yeah, in the beginning it was really, really cost-intensive. And now we decided to put it in a crowdfunding in the beginning, so to check the market, how the market is, and how we can sell the shoe. And we start the crowdfunding in 2 weeks.
Wow.
In 2 weeks, yeah. And I hope we will be ready in mid of March, and we know how it works. But in the beginning, it was really, really cost intensive, and we hope it will be a good project for us. In this case, it was really intensive, but with the other project I have here.
You could put it on if you want to. Yes, maybe we can see. So we have another runway model now. What kind of material is that? Can you? I will hold it. Look now. We're cameras ready.
Okay. Ready. Yeah, this is a project we started with Sympatex 8 years ago now. It's a recycled material made from 100% polyester. Also, the inside lining is made of 100% recycled polyester. Zippers are made of recycled polyester. And,
zippers? The zippers also?
Zippers, yeah, zippers.
Wow.
The membrane, which is very important for me, is also made of recycled polyester and 100% recycled materials. So we have a variety of purity on this product, and I think here the customer is now, it's easier for the customer to recycle it again. So now we need, of course, the recycle systems, and now it's our thing, our goal, that we make it much more easy for customers what happens at the end of life of this product. That's, for us, it's the main challenge at the moment. But I think with Sympatex together, in the beginning it was a partly recycled product 8 years ago. It was not climate neutral, and also the coatings were sometimes problems.
How do you calculate your investments? I mean, do you know how much money you're going to put in, or you'll say, okay, just let's spend it. Like we have a project with Elbphilharmonie or the airport here. Just spend it. How do you do it?
I think in the beginning, for me, it's the most important thing to put out the maximum, what I can get, and then to see how it works. Of course, you have a retail price, and I think when it's more than, let's say, 300 or 400 euros for such a jacket, so you are over the top, and then it's not competitive. So for this jacket, we have at the moment 299 euros, which is also a very good price for a high-performance, recycle and climate-neutral product.
Good conscience, yeah. And then let's take it back to you, Andreea. How do you deal with your finances? How do you work with your investments and calculate? I mean, to launch a product like that.
Yeah,
is it image or is it?
No, for us, it's always been about. We've always been a sustainably driven company, so we want to be at the forefront of innovation, especially in the hosiery industry, because if you're a girl in the audience, I'm sure you know how many times has it happened that you've put on a pair of pantyhose only to have them break on you as you're putting them on. And then you've just spent that money and it literally just goes to waste, and pantyhose end up in landfills in most countries around the world. So it's a problem that needs to be solved, but it's not one that most people think about. So what we're doing is we're trying to bring attention to it and create a better system for it. And as you were mentioning, it's hard as a brand because we're not innovating the materials ourselves. So we don't put investment up front in terms of money, but we do in terms of time. So we're involved in pilot projects. In Sweden, we're involved with a research organization called Messe Future Fashion. And what we do there is, the project we're involved with is called Remix, and we're investigating how to separate nylon from elastane so we can separate the two items and recycle them. And they've had successes in other research projects that they've done, and we will find out at the end of this year how the project has come along. And we're also looking for new projects. I have one in mind now that I can't share, but it's coming.
You can or you can't?
I can't, unfortunately. It's not confirmed yet. But
we're not listening.
But it's a new cellulosic fiber. That's all I can say about it. But yeah, for us, that's where the interest lies in, because we're also a small brand. We don't have a lot of money, but we do have more time to give than money. You could say it that way. So we want to work with our suppliers and with innovative companies like us so that we can develop a better fiber. I mean, for us, if the future, like our future goal would be to develop our own fiber that is long-lasting and also biodegradable. To implement circularity from the beginning is super important, as Sabine, you were saying, from the very beginning, from the design stage. Yeah.
So how well are your customers using this handing back the products? Do they give it back to recycle it? Does it work?
Yeah, we do. We get, I think, about 500 pairs a month, and we're growing. Right now we have two collection points in our recycling facilities in Sweden, and our two collection points are in Sweden and in Seattle. But the biggest deterrent right now is that the consumers have to pay for the shipping for them to get shipped to us. So that is a deterrent for many, especially if you live in Australia. That's a very far country. So we are working on ways to bring recycling closer to our consumers, and we've started doing events with our retailers. We'll try to do things online, and I mean the goal is also to maybe have various recycling plants around the world. And just to explain, because when I say recycling, as I mentioned, you can't separate nylon from elastane, so we can't make old pantyhose into new, unfortunately. But what we do is we take the pantyhose, we melt and grind them down, and we use it as filler material in fiberglass tanks. And these are tanks used in the commercial industry as oil and grease traps. So they're quite popular at I mean, most places have them. They're just dug underground so you can't see them. And this is the way we make sure that hosiery does not end up in landfill, and we're repurposing them into another item. And actually, if you want to see what one looks like, you can head over to our booth, because we brought a small tank with us.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
you still close the loop in a way.
Yeah, in a way. I mean, not fully closed, but it's the best we can do right now. And of course, we are trying to look into different avenues of what else can we make out of old stockings, basically.
Yeah. Maybe I can hand it over to you, Michael. So can we give that jacket back? Is it recyclable? Can we recycle it? Maybe.
Yes, that's possible, and we have also the project together for the closing the loop with Sympatex together. But in the last 8 years, we got 5 jackets back, so it's not that much. And, okay, they are very long-lasting. That's our main goal, to make the products very long-lasting, and we have a good repair service, which is much more important for me, because you can fix it a lot of times and to wear it for a long time. So, but it is, for me, it's a very important thing to have a closed loop for especially synthetic fibers. And what is also for me a very important thing is natural fibers, especially the old fibers. For me, I tell also old fibers. It's, for example, linen. Linen was cultivated in Europe, so much in the past, and now it disappeared nearly completely, and that's very sad for me, because it's a very good product. It's long-lasting. It's a bit functional also, and I like the comfort.
Yeah, it's one of the bast, what we call the bast fibers, which is sort of the stem, stalk fibers.
Closer to your mouth,
fibers.
please.
Sorry,
Yes.
can you hear me? Yeah, I get excited by those traditional, as you say, like historic fibers, because I think they have been pushed to the side with the advent of synthetics. Yes, right now they're more expensive than your average synthetic, but actually what we need to see is much more of a balance. We need to see people actually consciously thinking about brands in having a very broad range of fibers and materials within a range, and not just it's all polyester or it's all cotton, because this has sort of led us to the problem is we just don't have that diversity. And I totally agree with you. I love the bast fibers. I think they're so beautiful, durable, amazing. We can grow them in Europe. They don't need fertilizers and pesticides in the way that trying to grow cotton does. So, it's a no-brainer, but of course these industries have just become very, very niche. Unfortunately, it's time to kickstart those again. And hemp as well. Hemp is another amazing, amazing fiber as well. So.
Yeah, and in average, we've talked about it earlier, that people wear their clothes 1 to 5 times, and many of them just throw them away. So we have 5.5 billion kilos of clothing, and that's each year, to be precise. So do you think we have to really put pressure on the brands, Amanda? How could we do that? It's
really hard. When I've been curating this expo, which actually is in London next week, so please all come, on the Thursday and Friday. When I was sort of thinking about putting this together, one of my principles for trying to get people to think about us through a series of systems as they design, the end one was promote, because actually what we realized from talking to brands and being in the industry for so long is that people are very reluctant to talk about these amazing stories. Just here right now I'm getting really excited, because I'm thinking the level of ingenuity and the passion that is born out of sustainability is quite incredible, and really raising the bar on every different way we look at things. It's geeky, but it's cool as well. and so that's what keeps us excited. But brands are just not talking about it. Maybe they kind of don't know how to, or they're afraid that if they say one thing, they're going to get shot down because they didn't do something else. So we're in this strange space where the communication is quite stilted to the consumer. So the consumer doesn't really understand, generally, or most of the people that I speak to, really what does sustainability even mean. There's also a lot of greenwashing out there, which doesn't help. So it's
and
a really
also scandals of brands burning their stocks.
Indeed. So they don't trust brands to do the right thing. Even luxury brands, which you think, you should be able to. I don't quite know why you should, but anyway. We're in a funny space at the moment where there's a real hunger for making change, within the industry. The consumers want it as well, but there's a confusion over messaging.
Yeah, Linus,
I think.
what are your
What
thoughts
do you guys
Yeah,
think
what are your
those-
thoughts on that, Linus?
Yeah, look, I totally agree. It's one of the most. It's the first question I always get asked when someone finds out what I do. It's like, okay, which brand should I be going to?
Yeah.
And there's a few that you can say, but it's a difficult one, and it normally is a bit of a niche brand as well. You know, a brand which, and that's the difficulty. So sort of bringing this into the mainstream is what you're doing, which is awesome. But yeah, it's a really difficult one.
And how much better can fibers become in terms of the usage and circularity performance, Linus? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, look, I think it brings me back to what you were talking about earlier with linen. It's an industry which is pretty much all but dead in Europe. One of the big reasons for that is just the cost associated with the production, which is where circularity becomes really exciting, because suddenly, you know, let's say you get 20% fiber out of a crop, it leaves you with 80% of raw material with which in the past we never really thought about what we could do with that. And that's where starting to become smart about using those, you gave the example as well. When you get involved in circularity, okay, you might not be able to, or even partial circularity, you might not be able to make a pantyhose out of a pantyhose, but that's okay too. You know, it's a step in the right direction. And I think that's something that we've been exploring because we really want to support the expansion of the linen industry within Europe again by looking into alternative uses. So again, with the AgriLoop processing, we're actually able to grow and harvest the oil. Traditionally, you had to make a choice between a fiber crop and an oil crop, but with AgriLoop, you can do both. And so that's, again, where you can start making it a commercially viable, commercially interesting investment. But yeah, that's I think, one of the really big steps is getting smart about all the different uses that you can exploit raw material for.
And also, I would say, like mass production, for example, that shoe, how many can you produce? How many people can you satisfy with? I want that shoe. So, in terms of being commercial.
Yeah, that's a good question. We used also. Besides recycled car tire, we use also recycled textile waste from the textile industry, which is enough, definitely. But we used for the insoles mainly recycled cork because of the comfort for walking. And I think the recycled cork is a little bit maybe less. I think we can make a few thousand, but when it goes for, let's say, more 10,000, 20,000, then I think no.
What about the stockings?
Yeah, we're not at those numbers yet either. 10,000 is a lot of one style. Right now, I think for our most popular style, we order about 5,000.
So do we have to stay underground, Linus? What do you think? Underground in terms of, okay, there's not mass production, it's a great thing, but hello world, you cannot have it.
Yeah, look, really, really valid. Like, you're not making change if you're not spreading the word, making it possible. So one of the ways that we've been handling that issue is, while it's really cool to make 100% carbon neutral recycled, you need to ask yourself, do you want to make a product with 50% recycled content and make 10,000 of them, or 20,000 or 30,000, expand the production capacity? Or do you want to limit and make 100% recycled and only make like 5,000? Sort of, it's really like both are potentially valid. And again, an answer that, or something that you always need to keep in the back of your mind when talking about circularity is there's no one answer. I would say your approach is the right approach, and your approach is the right approach. Everyone's taking a step in the right direction. Again, the approach that we've taken is, our products have maximum 75% recycled inputs into the yarns. We think that's a good idea because it means that we can have massive volumes, that capacity isn't an issue for us. But yeah, in an ideal world, obviously we want to be really moving towards that.
I have to say something about the mass production, because we are not sitting here to make up a mass production with this product, of course. And
But you can, people can go crazy, say, I want that. It's not that you want mass production, it happens. I'll tell my daughter, and then all her friends, and then Instagram, and blah, and then you have a problem. I mean, it's like...
Definitely that can happen. But I think for me, the one thing is the development of the product, thinking of the end-of-life design and everything. And the other thing is, which is a very, very big issue, is a sustainable sales and distribution strategy. So we don't sell to everybody.
Oh.
And then they want it even more. They want it even more.
And then, yeah. If you have scarcity, that's the one you want. Okay. So maybe we can talk on. Sabine, how much better can fibers become in terms of the usage and circular? No, that's what I said. Sorry. What defines sustainable innovation for you? Maybe that could be a question that everybody could answer, because it's a personal one. So what defines sustainable innovation for you, Sabine?
So for me, it's definitely a circular fashion business model, and it should be based on ethical, social, ecological values. So far, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Of course, totally agree with all of that. But I would also like to say that, I suppose my wish list would be that, have that balance that I was talking about earlier, to sort of have a really intelligent, balanced use of materials that, where everything works in an interrelationship with each other, like nature does, so that we're not just making masses out of one thing. I love the idea that you're going to limit what you do, which
we don't sell to everybody.
Makes it even more desirable.
But
just this idea of, yes, balance, and obviously all the aspects that you mentioned there, but that our relationship with nature is so important in all of this, really is.
Yeah, I will hand it over to you too. What is sustainable innovation for you personally, from your perspective as a small brand?
Yeah, I think sustainable innovation for us is not only the product. For us, it's a big thing about communication to the customer, because we have a lot of very complex products, especially something like this, because this is one of the more easier products, because it's consists only of 100% polyester, so it's much more easy to explain to the customer. But especially at the stage of the end of life, it's definitely necessary to explain the customer where to put it again. So we don't have these recycling or circular systems which are established worldwide, which is a big problem, I think, especially on the customer side. And that's for us, it's, I think, the biggest thing in the future, to communicate and to explain a lot of things, but not so, let's say, eco, more cool and on the lifestyle side. Yeah, that's very important.
So raise an awareness and educate the people
over the lifestyle, not.
And how you can give back the jacket, and then another jacket will come up. Yeah. Okay. We'll hand it over, Andreea. What is sustainable innovation for you?
For us, it's about, especially with this new collection that we're releasing, it's called Innovations by Swedish Stockings, and it's our commitment to push ourselves and to further the industry into a better system. And it's not just about releasing products, honestly. It's also about, how we do at the Recycling Club. There's no connection between hosiery and these commercial oil and gas tanks, and it's more about promoting circularity and what can you do, and rethinking about rethinking what we have, and can it be used to make something else? Rethinking our waste streams, I would say.
And we talked about swapping just before that. That was an interesting way of, it can hand over to somebody else, so keep the circularity in a one way. And you, Linus, you can, from your point of view.
Yeah, look, so there's sort of three key tenets for me personally, and I think also more broadly for circular systems. The first one is the product that you're talking about when you talk circularity needs to be high performance. Unfortunately, while we'd like to think that consumers are ready to sacrifice their lifestyle for the sake of sustainability. The protests in France, for example, would indicate otherwise. You know, people are not ready to take a cut to performance on behalf of sustainability. It's a bummer. But so that's one of the things that it really needs to be the same quality, in my opinion. The second one is, obviously, it needs to be circular. You need to be smart about how you use it, and you know, you've covered those points beautifully. And then finally, affordability. Again, we've touched on it a few times in this conversation, that unless you can roll something out, unless you can make it available, you're not going to shift the needle. And again, there's going to be lots of different projects which do their little part. But yeah, so I think those three things, so high performance, circularity, and making it affordable and making it be able to roll out more widely, really important.
Okay, so, and maybe one last, how can we raise the awareness at the customer? Because those are the ones that want to buy the products, so education. Maybe the last words for you, Ananda. So
I know, we'll carry on talking about this, because it is difficult. Once you start to have these conversations that are quite complex around systems thinking, and how do you create a circular model, and how do you even, you know, just organizing, you know, the reclaim bins, for example, it does get super complex, and then after a while you see people, they just glaze over and they switch off, and you go, you lost them, and at what point?
Too technical.
So it's too technical, and I think you've got to engage people in stories that they can relate to emotionally. So I find that, you know, so many people still say, oh, they never knew that viscose was made out of wood. That's crazy. How do you get a tree to be made into that soft fiber? And they, you know, I mean, this fiber's been around since the early 1900s. But once you start telling them about the tree and they can kind of see it as a story, I think that's probably the way. You've got to get people by the heart somehow. You know, not make them feel bad, but actually, you know, capture their imagination through a positive story that they feel, wow, that's great, that's a cool thing to do. Yeah, I'll do that.
That's cool.
It's
the story.
Not an easy trick, but yeah, stories that connect with people emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I think transparency is something that we haven't really talked about. It's something that's moving really quickly. There's a lot of really exciting work being done in supply chain transparency. It's going to make the storytelling so much easier. We've all got a little gadget, little smartphone, which is able to scan QR codes. I think, that'll make that storytelling so much easier, and so much more engaging when it feels like, personal ownership of that item by scanning that.
Feel like they own it,
really
rather
cool.
than it's being
really
sort
cool.
of pushed.
But how well are the brands going to react on transparency? Do they want to talk about where does it come from?
They're not going to have a choice, honestly. They're just not. It's just that's where we're heading. And so really we're kind of still wading through glue on this one. But, you know, very soon we're seeing legislation kind of hot on everyone's heels. So, the leaders in this, you know, the sort of caring groups type thinking that everybody else will be going, oh my God, they're doing it. I have to, you know, they're protecting their supply chains by really, really looking closely and also communicating that to the consumer.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one because it's also where you can start drawing in the suppliers. They often have a pretty quiet role in all of this, but I'm not sure they should. And like, you know, we just heard from Synpatex, there are people doing the right thing out there and taking the right steps. But that'll, I think, be a really cool step if suppliers start to just bunny hop over brands. Sorry. Yeah. And you know, doing it themselves. Stop relying on brands to put pressure on the supply chain. Supply chain, do it yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Every player has to get involved. There's no sort of wait for them to do it anymore, you know? So I think it's really lovely when you hear about sort of, you know, dots being joined up, which is not natural to the fashion industry. Somehow we've got this kind of competitive, don't share your supply chains with anyone. No, well, those days are over. Those has to be new thinking, sharing, you know, sharing.
And working together.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah. That's how innovation happens, and that's really exciting.
So we're reaching the last minutes. Is some subject we haven't touched yet? Somebody wants to say, oh God, we have to talk about that. I haven't had the chance to show my jacket again, or no? Well, okay, if anybody would say, okay, then we can Oh, nobody? Everybody's fine? Okay, that's a good one. So I can say, let's wrap it up. Thank you very much. I can say that we've learned new materials need new processes and investments and research and development. And it's difficult to calculate, but it is worth it. And it's needed. And we've talked about sustainable innovation in materials and fibers leading into a sustainable future of fashion. So thank you very much for your input, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.